I'd like to say good afternoon to everyone. Let's call Prattville Planning Commission to order. Madam Secretary, would you call roll, please?
Mayor Gillespie, Councilman Bowles, Chairman Gardner,
Here.
Vice Chair McCauley, Chief Johnson, Ms. Carpenter, Mr. Hall, Mr. Nelson, and Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Let it be known that we do have a quorum. The August 16 meeting minutes, has everyone had a chance to read them? And if so, do I hear a motion?
Motion to accept.
Motion by Mr. Smith. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Carpenter. All in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand. Motion carried. Thank you. No old business. We got new business, but it's a public hearing. It's the zoning, B2 zoning, east of Highway 82, adjacent to RTJ. Represent All South Corporation. This is a public hearing. If you're going to speak, would you please come up and sign up with Ms. Morgan, the secretary, for or against? You can sign afterward.
We have a. We have. I'm Joe Turner, live at 511 Mossy Oak Bridge. We have a prospect, or it wants to build a multi-family lease type of facility adjacent to the golf course. It'll be something along the. It looked like a residential house, but it's for multiple units for people coming in with a group of golfers. 4, 5, 6 people at a time. So it's somewhat like the facilities that they have at the Legends for that purpose. He has a couple of other units. He has one in Birmingham at the RTJ, and he's got one in Oregon at a golf facility. The intent was, of course, to get zoning specifically for him and the way we were doing it, but the way his property is located, it makes it a little bit difficult just to go spot zone that little corner down there. And so all of this property that is, as you drive in the Constitution Avenue from Highway 82 on the right-hand side to Fay Branch, which is right at the edge of that field, and I'll throw up an aerial here in just a second. And then on the left-hand side, up toward Legends Park, which is already zoned B2. And so this sort of fills in that gap of what we have always thought would be either hotels or restaurants or little small shops or that sort of thing. And so what we're asking for is the zoning of that entire piece of property in order to get this to work out for Mr. Oster. And on the map, I'll be glad to act as your easel. Yeah, can you do that? I've got it right. The area, this is the road going into the golf course. Everyone see it? Going into the golf course, and what we're talking about basically is this piece of property right here. And then he would have his facility located down at this area, and then hopefully we'll build a couple more in that process. But all of that is, I mean, the logical use is either multifamily or hotel or restaurant, something of that nature. Questions?
Mr. Turner, how has that worked in other areas, or do you know, the other two locations?
Great. He's a pretty conservative guy, so if it wasn't working, we wouldn't be doing it. So,
Would you speak in the mic so because
I'm
they are required?
I said he's a pretty conservative guy, so he would not be doing it if it wasn't working, and he has reported it that it is working well. So.
All right. Does anyone else have a question of Mr. Turner at this time?
Will they live there while they're here?
No.
What's you gonna build?
You're talking about the owner?
No, golfers.
Oh, yes, when they will come in and rent it like for a week or 3 or 4 days or something like that, yes.
And he has staff here that comes in.
He will, that's right, he'll have,
A motel room?
he'll actually, what he's done in his other places is he actually hires a cook, not just maintenance, not just cleanup type people, but a cook that can come in and prepare meals for, 4 or 5 business people or something that come in.
Sounds right to me.
All right. Any more questions, Mr. Turner? I don't have. Mr. Duke, would you come forward? Oh, Madam Secretary, let the record show that America Elizabeth is present. Thank you.
I apologize for being late.
Pass, accepted.
Sure, I can certainly give you my comments now or wait till the end of the public hearing. I don't know if there is anybody else to.
Well, if you wish to wait till the public at
Sure.
the end of the public hearing, is it?
Anybody here speak for or against this?
Well, I asked the question and no one else has signed in.
Wait for Mr. Turner to make his presentation. We make a motion to do it at the same time. Well, you won't have to
Well,
do it again, 'cause
if there's no one else, I'm gonna close this public hearing.
That's fine.
So,
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My report has basically been sent to you earlier in the staff report. Just to clarify for folks that are tuning in on YouTube, we'll cover the specifics. This is a rezoning of the property, as Mr. Sanford described, basically on north and south side of Constitution Avenue to.
Mr. Chairman, does it have to be introduced before we go?
no, not at this time. It'll be introduced.
But the public hearing was closed.
No, the public hearing is not closed as of yet.
I thought you closed.
No, I haven't closed it yet. He's giving his report now.
All right.
You're looking at 43.58 acres being requested to be zoned B2. Mr. Turner described that there's a set use for a portion of that at this time there along Fay Branch. Of course, with all zonings, what you're looking at is consistency or whether or not it's complementary to your long-range plan. The area that is under consideration was designated as mixed-use transitional in your 2009-2010 comprehensive plan. That is for most of us, a new term that we haven't seen in the comp plan before, and frankly, we don't have a good zoning category for it just yet. But if you read the report, you note that what we're looking at there is certainly allowing things that are currently allowed in B2, such as hospitality or lodging, some small amount of retail, but not to this extent that you have seen up along the Target Shopping Center, which is called Prattville Town Center, or High Point Center, or other parts of the home place development. But in the absence of a better zoning category, B2 is the most appropriate at this time. We're looking at some changes to create a better zoning category that will fit for this corridor, which is mixed-use transitional, and also Old Farm Lane, which is mixed-use transitional, because we expect to see those areas really take off in the next decade, especially Old Farm Lane, as that road is improved within the next year to 18 months. But again, the requested use and the requested zoning for the uses desired and for the consistency with the comp plan is appropriate. So, be glad to answer any questions.
Does any commission have any questions for Mr. Duke at this time? No, thank you, Mr. Duke. I now close the public hearing. Mr. Smith, would you read the resolution, please?
Absolutely.
zoning request B2 U.S. Highway 82 at Constitutional Avenue. James H. Sanford, petitioner, September 20, 2012. Whereas James H. Sanford is the owner of the property described in Attachment A and shown in Attachment B, and whereas the property is to be zoned is located inside the city limits at U.S. Highway 82 and Constitution Avenue, and whereas petitioner wishes to zone the property to B2, general business, and whereas a public hearing on the proposed zoning was held by the Prattville Planning Commission on September 20th, 2012, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Prattville Planning Commission does hereby recommend the zoning of said property to B2. So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Nelson. Do I have any questions or comments to Mr. Duke or Mr. Turner at this time?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to hear Mr. Duke's explanation again for the whole thing since we're out of the public hearing.
I'd be glad to if you'd like.
Okay.
The property is about 43 acres. It is located in an area that's mixed-use transitional. That area is more appropriate. The zoning for that, to match that land use designation, is appropriately B2. And we would recommend approval of this request.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any more questions? Call for the vote. All in favor of this resolution, US 82 request from B to B2, let it be known by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a preliminary plat, New Tower Run. They're asking for a time extension. They're located up Upper Kingston Road. Owner and developer is Edward J. Kill. High Tower LLC, Representative Mac Newman, Oman Consultant Services. Ms. Carpenter, would you read that resolution for us?
Preliminary plat, time extension, New Tower Run at Upper Kingston, September 20th, 2012. Whereas Edward J. Kelly is the owner and High Tower LLC is the developer of New Tower Run at Upper Kingston, and whereas the developer has requested for a time extension of 1 additional year, and whereas the preliminary plat was granted a time extension for 1 year on September 15, 2011, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Prattville Planning Commission hereby gives its approval to extend the time of completion for the approved preliminary plat, New Tower Run at Upper Kingston. Now therefore be it further resolved that all contingencies of June 7, 2007 preliminary plat approval remain in effect. So moved.
Do I hear a second? Second by Chief Johnson. Mr. Duke, would you explain to us about the extension?
Mr. Newman is here if you have any questions for him concerning this property as well. Again, this is a standard time extension on a preliminary plat. You've seen several of these over the last couple of years. This would be the 5th extension, I believe, on this property. The zoning, which is, I believe, R3 for this property, has not changed, and the subdivision regulations have not changed appreciably. Well, they haven't changed at all since this was adopted in 2007. So that's solely at the discretion of the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Duke. Any of the Commission have Mr. Nelson?
Mr. Duke, is this the first extension?
No, sir. This is the first approval was 2007. You've had one every year since that time.
2007.
Yes, sir. So they've asked for an extension every year since 2007, and y'all have granted it previously.
That's all.
Mayor?
Help educate me here. Is there a timeline, or is there a number, is there a limit? Can this continue to go on and on and on? Or?
It can. Again, it's solely the discretion of the Commission. I have recommended in the past that if there are significant changes either in the zoning of the property or in the subdivision regulations that were in effect at the time it was approved, that you'd want to look at, possibly letting the approval lapse and let the new regulations apply. But that's like I said a minute ago, that's not been the case here. Those regulations haven't changed.
So there's been no significant change, so your recommendation is to add another extension?
I don't see any harm in doing that. It's the best way I know to put it. I mean, there's no great advantage except to the property owner in doing so. And again, it's solely the discretion of the commission. There's, like I said, no harm in extending it at this point.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Carpenter first, if you would. Ms. Carpenter.
Mr. Duke, I know you said because the subdivision regulations have not changed significantly or at all, and the zoning has not changed.
That's correct.
The other thing I would think would be significant, and I think you're going to tell me it hadn't changed either, is the surrounding property. Is it still the same as it was?
Basically, this is, if you're...
I mean, I know where it was, but you're going to tell me that nothing significant.
No, there haven't been any surrounding developments come in around this. There hasn't been anything in the watershed, for instance, that passes through it to change. Frankly, we would like to see this one built because it would solve a long-running drainage problem in that area that was developed initially when it was in the county, and your rules did not apply. This will really help us. So we would like to see this developer given advantages and hopefully come forward with this development as soon as he's able.
Thank you. Mr. Hall?
She answered. She asked the questions I wanted.
Okay.
And again, like I said, Mr. Newman is here if you would like to ask him some of these questions.
Okay. Let's see what Mr. Nelson wants.
Well, the reason I was asking, I know him, I believe it was last year we went through this, and we basically decided 3 extensions. Anybody else remember? I don't have any problem extending it, but when you extend it, it puts more problems on y'all. Maybe you got time enough to take that paperwork and go ahead. I don't know. But it's going, we need to set some kind of rule. We need to talk about it in a meeting or something other. Need to come up with so many extensions, you just can't keep going on. I don't think like that.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, if I might, y'all discussed a great deal of options.
Right.
And I think in the end, you came back to some kind of rule of thumb about 3, and then it required further discussion.
Right.
But in the end, that discussion came down to, well, if it's not doing much in the way of harm or the regulations haven't changed, then y'all didn't see any real, and I'm putting a collective y'all in that. I mean, I think some of you had differences with that.
Right.
But
I really don't have a problem if y'all don't. I mean, y'all the one that has to handle all this stuff.
From a subdivision standpoint, at this point, we're pretty slow. We have other things going on, but this is not a major burden for us at the moment.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Hall?
I would suggest that we extend this one more time, this time. And instead of have a meeting or whatever sometime, make a motion, get it approved, that we will only go so many years and let them know to start with. That's going to be X number of times they can extend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Newman, if you will, come up and shed us a little light on the extension, please.
My name is Mark Newman. My father-in-law was the owner of the property, Dr. Hightower. And basically, when it was all developed or planned to be developed was in 2007. Lots were easy to sell, then the bottom fell out. The land is paid for, but we didn't feel like we should invest in it, build it, without having anybody there to buy the lots. You know, we didn't want to pay a huge note for lots that were, you know, somewhat unfinished or not developed or anything like that. So the whole time we've been trying to find a buyer before we start to develop. And it's a small subdivision, it's only 19 lots, so the price range of the lots are significant. I mean, where, you know, this certain builders are looking for the cheaper lots at this time, and until they get, bought up or there's not any more developed, then, that's basically it. So that's why we keep asking for the extension. We just don't want to put anything on the ground and then have lots that, that nobody can buy because they're too expensive. So.
Does any other commissioner have any question for Mr. Newman at this time? All right, thank you, Mr. Newman. Call for the vote. All in favor of the extension? Let me get to it. Oh. Yeah. All in favor of the New Tower Run extension, let it be known by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. It carries. Mr. Newman, it's been extended for another year. Thank you. We got a final plat, Glenbrook Subdivision Plat 2B, located off of Syndicate Drive South, owned as Stone Martin Builder, LLC, Representative Barrett Simpson, Incorporated. Mr. Hall, would you please read that resolution?
Resolution final plat, Glenbrook Subdivision Plat 2B, September 20th, 2012. Whereas Stone Martin Builders is the developer of Glenbrook Subdivision Plat 2B, and whereas the proposed development is located off Sydney Drive, and whereas the proposed development is located outside the city limits. Number 2, the sketch plan was approved on November 1st, 2011 with contingencies. The preliminary plat was approved on March 15, 2012, and whereas the required city departments have reviewed and commented on the proposed final plat, now therefore it be resolved that the City of Prattville Planning Commission hereby gives its favorable review of the submitted final plat of Glenbrook Subdivision Plat 2B. Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt this resolution.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelson. Mr. Dick, you want to give your report?
Yes, sir. You have the next phase of the ongoing Glenbrook subdivision before you. This is 40 lots in phase 2 that continues that connection that was discussed over the last couple of meetings with the River Chase North subdivision. It also provides a connection to phase 1 through Benson Street, and this phasing matches what was approved by the commission. The only issue of concern here is that this subdivision is not at substantial completion at the moment. They're very close. They have asphalt still to put down, and the other, I believe, sidewalks are still pending as well, which your regulations basically say we're not supposed to put that on the agenda unless they request that come before you and be presented with a bond to cover those items, and they have made that request and have submitted a bond total to us that we will basically either increase or decrease depending on what stage they're at when they're ready for us to sign the plat. So, with the bond in place, we don't see any reason for delay here.
Okay.
The only thing I would request that you amend the resolution to make some statement about a bond being posted to cover the unfinished improvements.
Okay. Well, how far are they along? What percentage?
They're about 80% complete. I mean, they should, as I understand it, the city is doing what we call proof rolling of the roadway, ready for them to pave tomorrow, I believe. So they're pretty close. Frankly, the burden is all on the developer here, having to provide a bond to cover something he's probably going to be finished with in a couple of days. But these are your requirements. I would certainly suggest that you continue to require a bond for these types of requests. But as far as completion, they're very close to it. They're making good progress.
Good. Any commission have any question, Mr. Duke?
Hadn't we been requiring 90% or 95?
Yes, sir. You have a statement in your regulations that basically requires substantial completion.
Right.
And that's roughly 90%, if you want to call it that. The requirements list off certain items that have to be complete. And it's really down to just what we call minor punch list items. Your regulations also state that they can request, which again, it's at your discretion as a commission to approve it with them posting a bond. So while your regulations say have to be at this before it can be approved, your regulations also say that you have the discretion to allow for a bond to be posted, and that's what they're requesting.
We need to treat everybody alike. When you start coming down on it or changing from near completion of 90, it's going to, of course, 85 is pretty close, 80%. But
yes, sir. No.
There again, we need to think about that. But I was out there riding over it Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
It's all looking pretty good. It's fine. They're doing a good job, look like.
Yes, sir. And I'm certainly not disagreeing with you, but I will tell you that the last phase, phase A, or I forget how they term this. Yeah, phase A of Plat 2, they did the same thing. That has been a consistent request by these folks.
Okay.
We haven't had any issue with it. Like I said, I think it's almost more burden on them to have to go get the bond, but I certainly suggest that you keep requiring it.
All right.
All right. Any more questions, Mr. Duke? Yes, sir.
Mayor, my name's Martin Sweet. I live at 1609 Trolley Road in the River Chase North neighborhood, right behind the area in question, Glenbrook. My main concern I'd like to address or bring forward is I have approximately 800 square feet of yard space that has been rendered useless by water runoff created by the road. I think that's in question that was being put in, and request assistance in getting that resolved. My primary concern with the water runoff that has occurred since they've done the construction up there, the water runs off at a heavy pace during the heavy storms we had back in the winter. But my main concern is the safety, especially for small children. I have a child. There's 3 other kids in my neighborhood. And when that water runoff comes off that area through my yard, it's sufficient to sweep a small child or a pet downstream. So I'd like to have some assistance in getting that resolved. The folks have put in some rocks, some water runoff efforts. I think that's done probably a lion's share of trying to resolve that, but that remains to be seen when we have our next heavy rain like we had back in the winter. Back on the last rain that we had on Monday, the 17th, it was fairly moderate rain. The water flowed through there. Still, one of my concerns is the water is cutting through my yard, that 800 square foot section that I mentioned. Concern with that also being that I've got a section of my yard that's not appealing when it comes time. If I need to sell my house, that's going to be a negative factor in trying to get my house sold. So in addition to that, I've got an area that isn't appealing, and I've got water that is leaving trash and other runoff that flows through and deposits it in my yard. In addition, my neighbor, John, I don't know his last name, he couldn't be here due to work, other circumstances, but the way the water is flowing through my yard is actually undercutting his fence line. If it continues at the way it's going to undercut his fence and probably start eroding further into his backyard. What I'm looking for, if I can use my wife's words, and I quote, she wants her yard back, ask for assistance in getting that resolved. One, to reduce the flow of water to what we is sure is a safer level, and to redirect the water out of my yard. And also, in addition to that, fill in There's a black mesh fence line that has been placed there. It's meshing that's used to kind of retain the water flow. I understand it's there probably until the grass vegetation grows in. I've got that. But when that fence gets pulled off, I've got about a 1 foot ditch that's going to cut through my yard that I'll need to have filled in as well. And with that, again, I ask for your assistance in getting this resolved, and if there's anybody could provide an estimated timeline when that might occur. Other than that, that's my only questions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Duke, would you address that for us, please?
Yes, sir. We had a couple of folks that showed up after the last, I believe it was your last meeting. You heard from River Chase North, the final plat there, it's plat 7, which is adjacent to Mr. Sweet's property. He's actually in the River Chase North plat number 6. What we've got is some damage that's taking place or some movement of the stream during construction, and the primary cause of that is the erosion control measures that have been set up directly south of this subdivision. Basically, it holds water back, but once you get a storm of a certain size, water looks for a different way to go around that barrier. The subdivision will be in maintenance for at least 2-year time period. River Chase will be in the same type of maintenance situation. Any issues that need to be corrected will be corrected before it's basically accepted by the city and the developers turn loose. I can speak to this situation as far as damage being done. Now, as far as the amount of water that's coming through there, it may be difficult for it to appear to be the case, but there's less water. Essentially, there's no more water coming off than there was pre-development. Your regulations require that there be a detention of what's created by the development. Okay, the clearing off of that property, the addition of asphalt, frankly, even the addition of grassed yards creates more runoff than the pre-development condition. That additional runoff is set up to go into detention structures. So the water flow is a little more managed and channelized, but it's not an additional flow that's coming through Mr. Sweet's property. Mr. Sweet also has a portion of his properties contains a drainage easement that was there when it was platted. So what we want to do is make sure what's coming through there is contained in that easement and also in the area that's set up there in River Chase 7. So I'm not sure if that answers the question. I'll certainly get with Mr. Sweet here when we're done and meet out there. I believe I've spoken to him on the phone previously and spoken to several of his other neighbors that had hoped to talk to y'all at the last meeting, but I don't think they were given much of an opportunity. But we are certainly aware of the issue.
Okay. Any commission have anything to say to Mr. Duke? Well, if you will, Mr. Duke, like you say, you're going to send someone up, or you probably go up yourself and take some pictures of it so we can see what you're talking about. Somebody.
We can do that. We have been aware of the issue all the way through this construction, and this is not necessarily new. It's just something that we have a competing interest here. You've got the need to meet the ADM regulations and control erosion, which they are doing pretty effectively. And then you have that system that's set up. When you get a large enough rainfall, it's going to cause the flow of the stream to move quite a bit. And it may be hard to describe that without you actually seeing it. Think of it as damming up the stream. It's not a running stream at the moment. It's just a wet weather drainage way. Okay. And so when that gets a decent enough flow in it, it creates a different path. But they're required to manage that. Both ADM and the city keep a good watch on that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Duke.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Of his property, how much of the drainage easement would you say is there?
And Mr. Smith, I couldn't tell you exactly, but there's basically a 20-foot into his lot that is part of a drainage easement.
Okay.
If
20
I've got him correctly identified. Basically, everybody along that ditch has 20 feet of their property that is a part of the easement.
That helps.
Thank you, Ms. Switz. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Hold it 1 minute.
Come on up. so
Come
we can
speak in
hear
the
you.
mic, Mrs.
Please.
Sweet.
I can understand.
The way the water flowed when I purchased the house did not cut through that section of my yard that's since developed, since the natural vegetation had been removed. We had the massive rains. Then, as Mr. Duke had mentioned, the movement of the water flow has shifted due in part to various reasons. Some of the black meshing has caused it to back up and redirect, but originally that water line was not cutting through my yard. That has developed since.
Is it cutting through in another area other than the drainage easement, or is it going through what would be classified as the easement?
That part I don't know. That's the technical part I couldn't answer.
Okay.
But all I know is I've got a fairly sizable section of my yard that I can't use.
Okay. Did you know there was an easement there when you bought it, or?
I knew where my property line went. At the time I bought it, it was winter. We didn't have the rain. The area behind my house wasn't even remotely. I had no idea they were putting a neighborhood back there. There's one further out, several hundred yards over the other way, and then 2 weeks after I moved in, they started making the construction, and that's when the water, you start doing that, the water pickup increased. But I'm just wanting my little section of the yard back. That's what I'm after. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sweet, before you leave, make sure you get with Mr. Duke and so he can get your address and whatever. Or give it to our secretary so she can get that, so we'll know exactly what your house address is and stuff.
And what was your address?
1609 Trolley, Trolley, in River Chase North. I'm in the cul-de-sac.
Okay.
Mr. Duke?
I'll look at it myself.
I didn't leave the commission with the impression we wouldn't take care of this before they were released. That's one of those things that they would have to deal with before we would release them from the bond that you're asking or may ask them to put up. I mean, they're not done at this point with the subdivision.
Right.
Those items will have to be punch listed out and dealt with before we would release them to start building houses.
But if it's going to create a haphazard for his property, we want it to be entertained immediately.
Absolutely. And if there's something going on there that, the engineering department's been looking at it, I've been out there, if there's something there that needs to be corrected, that's the purpose of the maintenance period. And we will make sure Mr. Sweet is basically taken care of.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Carpenter?
I'd like to amend the motion that it be contingent upon the bond being posted by the developer in the plan, subject to planning department's approval.
All right.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor that the amendment be amended, let it be known by raising your right hand. Thank you. And we'll now vote on the motion. We just voted on that. Right. That was amended. The final plat for Glenbrook subdivision, plat number 2. All in favor of the final plat, let it be known by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Thank you. Is there anything else? All right. Meeting's adjourned.